Welcome to BCS Key Insights webinar. I'm Brian Runciman. We're looking at the diversity advantage and how to unlock it. We have a special guest with us who I will introduce shortly. We'll come to you in a minute, Rubi, if that's okay. This is following up some recent research that BCS have done on diversity in a number of areas: ethnicity, age, gender, and so on. Shortly, we're going to have a follow-up report on social mobility as well. Look out for information on that in a couple of weeks' time. So this is me. We will have a Q&A session at the end. In fact, we found that occasionally it's better to have questions through the presentation. So if you'd like to pose a question, here's a little screenshot of the software. To ask a question, you say maximize the control panel, pressing the orange arrow that's there. The questions can be typed into the panel there, and then we will see that. So if you ask them through, we might just drop them in as Rubi and I are talking, or we'll come to them at the end. So perhaps I can just introduce now our speaker. We're very pleased to have Rubi Kaur with us, a fellow of the BCS. Rubi, tell us a little bit about yourself first of all, please.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you so much to the BCS for inviting me here to talk about diversity, because to me diversity is so important. I think we have so much to gain within the IT industry if we really tackle diversity in a positive light. So if I can just give you a very brief outline of my career so far. So I've got 20 years in the IT industry. All of that has been in the tech industry so far. I am a solutions architect, which means I build solutions which are very important to today's modern society. I didn't fall into the IT industry. I actually planned my way into the IT industry. I did a degree in physics and computer science. I've always had a passion for technology, and I'm so glad I did, because this is the industry that I want to remain in the future. So very important I've stayed in the industry. I'm also very passionate about giving back to the industry as well, so much so that I've joined the trustee board of the BCS.
Excellent.
And I'm also a council member. And I absolutely endorse diversity on all levels. So this presentation will not just be about gender diversity, as I've got the classic story of being the only girl in the computer science class, and usually one of only two women in my IT industry in the projects that I work in, which is a crying shame, really. And I really want to endorse more diversity and more inclusion. I think inclusion is the operative word in our tech industry. But this webinar is going to concentrate on not just gender diversity, but also sexual orientation and ethnicity, and also age, as well as culture and nationality. In my view, no one should be discriminated on any of those levels or exploited on any of those levels. And so therefore, let's really go on a journey to understand what we can do. Okay, and I also want to share some of my own experiences that I've seen and witnessed, and very positive experiences within the industry that we can learn from. And I'm sure we'll hear lots of examples and talk about those examples as well during this webinar. So what we are going to learn, so there's going to be two major themes I want to delve into. The first one is why diversity matters. Now, I know in past webinars we've probably delved into this a little, but let's just touch on some of those areas. And the other one is, most importantly, what can we do? And the word we is very important. And if we just unpack those very slightly, why diversity matters, we're going to examine three different levels. From a business level, what diversity matters, and on a personal level, what diversity to the individual matters, and also, most importantly, on a societal level, what does diversity do and why does it matter? But what we will spend a little more detail going into is examining three different stakeholders, which we've labelled here as leaders. What can leaders do to assist the inclusion and the diversity agenda? What can employees do? Often we think employees as the majority group, they don't need to do anything for diversity, and that is just so wrong. We really need to assist and make sure our employees are well engaged at an emotional level on the diversity and inclusion agenda. And finally, it's the diverse group of all the above that I've mentioned, of all those different diverse groups that we need to ensure that they also play a role in this. Okay, that's what we're going to learn. So let's begin by just looking at and examining the context and the background to this. The BCS, a couple of months ago, I believe, put out a very hard-hitting, real matter-of-fact diversity in IT report, much applauded because it gave us the startling facts, the bad news, as I should put it, that, and as you can see there, that diversity and inclusion is in a pretty bad shape in our industry. You know, we read those numbers there and, you know, all below, you know, 30%, and it's not where we should be, and that is a problem. Because in the future, where we go, we'll be looking at the industrial UK strategy. And that's our future for the UK, and it's not in isolation. It obviously needs to have international collaboration in the UK industrial strategy. And IT is at the very heart of that industrial strategy. And IT exists to solve business problems, okay? And what are the problems we're compounding then if diversity is not good in our industry? And these are businesses exist to make revenues, and they work by innovation. And if we haven't got innovation, we'll miss opportunities for revenue generation. And building on that, if our IT industry is not fully representative of the customer base we serve, we're not doing proper market representation. And one of the most important points is also that we're missing out on the talent. We have a huge skills gap, as has been noted from the industrial strategy. And we're really confining ourselves to a very, very small talent pool, which cannot be the way, because what really drives all of this is innovation. We need innovation, we need new ideas, we need different perspectives. And that comes about by having a diverse talent pool. And the final point I'll make is within all of us, we unfortunately have unconscious bias. Much talked about, but what are these? These are the stereotype images we create if we do not interact with people from different diverse groups. Inbuilt in us, we have fears. We are not able to comprehend things that are different and things that are alien to us if we don't experience those sorts of viewpoints and those sorts of cultures. So that's the stark picture we have, diversity.
And that's a very good point, isn't it, to link in what you're saying here about being at the forefront of AI, because unconscious bias has found its way into AI algorithms, hasn't it? And so if we use the bias training data, then also AI decisions and endpoints become blurred and wrong.
Exactly, wrong being the exact point. And therefore, you know, the future is not looking rosy. We're not fulfilling what the industrial strategy asked us to do if the talent isn't there and diversity isn't there and the algorithms at the end are wrong. So that builds the picture. So therefore, why does diversity matter? Okay, because we're going to solve a lot of problems and we're going to benefit. We're going to benefit on many layers, as we talked about. Businesses work through wealth creation, through value creation, and they need innovation. They need new ideas, they need freshness, and they also need, you know, a bigger talent pool to fill the skills gap. On a personal level, okay, it's very much about looking at our values that we have. Our values, our personal values, should be about tolerance, about acceptance of different opinions and different ideas. Now, I work as a solutions architect in a very multicultural, very multi-international environment, and it is such a pleasure to hear different viewpoints and different ideas because they challenge the status quo, they enrich our idea thinking, and they enrich the solution that we come out with. Therefore, our products that we put out into the marketplace are fully representative of the ideas and opinions. So on a personal level, we gain so much because we may look different, we may sound different, we may behave differently, but we've all got the same core values that, in effect, we all, in a modern day sense, we all want to make a society which is fairer, which is more equal and more inclusive. And to the IT industry, that's so important because as the BCS's slogan is all about making IT good for society. And that IT is built up by having those core values.
Let me ask you a question on that one,
Sure.
Ruby. Being open to multi ethnic or multicultural teams and seeing the benefit of that, do you think it's easier for you to do that because you've come from a background where you might actually be discriminated against, so you actually bring in a more open mind straight away, and it might be more difficult for other cohorts, so they need to pay more attention to that kind of thinking?
Totally agree. I think you're absolutely correct. It is because of my background. I've noticed working in a very male orientated industry, I have to be on the front foot.
Yeah.
I have to go in there to convince people and work twice as hard that I have the knowledge, I have the skills, and then, much to everyone's credit, people do take me seriously. I'm a designer, technical architect, quite a senior position in the IT industry. And I think in general, you would have to be very positive to work in those sorts of areas. But with people who have not, experienced working in those multi-ethnic or come from a diverse background themselves, then it is a learned behaviour.
Yeah.
It is something that we need to be aware. And we will talk about this later when we get onto what employees as the majority group can do to assess that. It's a great question.
Lovely.
So society, we have these shared goals. We all want to make IT good for society. And that is all important because of the future. And the future, as we'll see, is all about these big megatrends that are hitting us very much today and will be at the forefront of technology. It's known as the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah.
We're well and truly in it. It's a revolution that's happening, and if we don't think in an ethical way, we don't talk about the good that technology is creating for society and for the future society, we make life very difficult for ourselves if we don't consider diversity as a key part to this. Okay, so what I want to do now is just spend a little bit of time talking about the different stakeholder groups and what leaders can do. The first point I'll make is that leaders are absolutely vital to the agenda for diversity and inclusion. It needs to be visible, it needs to be vocal, they need to communicate quite coherently to the whole of the organisation, that it embeds and imbibes itself into that organisation, that this is a transformational programme. It is something that we need a culture change with, and we need to have, certain, I give some examples here that I've seen. For example, setting goals is a very good way to do this. For example, I've seen in Vodafone, we have a target to get 30% of women in senior leadership positions. And we're coming from a base of below 17% at the moment of women in senior leadership positions. So some way to go, but at least the target and at least the benchmark is made to do that. We've also had from the LGBT group that the CEO has said that we want to be at least on the Stonewall list of the most inclusive organisation to work for. And they achieved that because they set the target. They've come from nowhere to be on the list of those acceptable organisations to work for.
So is that set by numbers, or is that a sort of an attitudinal sort of approach? Because we don't always know all the information about the people that we work with, do we?
No, we don't. We have to use data to do that. We actually have to go through and trawl through HR data to find, what the base level is and where we're starting from. Some targets are aspirational. The 30% is aspirational. It's been set for the last 2 years, and it's slowly showing it a slow increase. And the messaging gets very interesting because it starts to ripple across the whole of the organisation. First, it was only the women community that would know about this, but now the CEO goes on International Women's Day, which is a full event in Vodafone, to actually make the point that everyone has to get behind this. And he also makes the point to the males within our organisation to say you have to help. We live in an equal society. To say that, and we've got lots of hashtags he for she. Men to her on our local Yammer group. So it's a case of really telling the message and being able to enact that message. And measurement is so key to that, because it can be aspirational, and then you try and head for that aspirational goal. But unless you're measuring it, unless you're doing something to reach it, then it's pie in the sky, and
Absolutely.
it should not be a tick box exercise at any point.
Now, I've had a question here from Peter Abrahams. Do you include disability in the inclusion problem?
I most definitely do, yes.
Yeah, it's in the report as well, of course.
It is. Disability is most important. In fact, my own experience of disability, especially as I worked in the public sector as well, and the public sector really takes the lead when it comes to disability. There are lots of software, not a humongous amount of software for people with partially sightedness, being able to use the JAWS software that reads back to people, facilities for guide dogs as well. Myself, on a personal level, I recently completed an MBA, and hard work for 3 years, but I did sit next to Barry, who was registered blind.
Okay.
And I was absolutely amazed by the experience of how he managed through his software that he used. And it was such a pleasure to witness and to experience how Barry was able to cope, and never once saw any of his disability as a problem to him achieving his MBA and learning. And it just, it makes us, and my life is so much more enriched for seeing from a different point, from an experience that makes it so much better. So,
nice example.
Yeah, absolutely. The private sector has a little way to go on disability. I having worked in both sectors, I think the private sector should really start to, look at accessibility, in a far better light. And I wish BCS, leads on that way as well for accessibility software.
So we were talking about leaders. Sorry, I took you off on a tangent there. So sorry, back to your leaders slide here, Ruby.
Yeah, so culture change, very important. And if diversity is seen as an enabler and is actually entwined into the top priorities for the leadership program, and we did an IT report recently, and maybe diversity isn't as high as we want it to be. But if you look at the business case, and I would tell people to look at this fantastic report that was done by PwC, and if you're an academic, you will absolutely love that paper, because it gives the formulae for how you create revenue from diversity. Okay, the background information is all there for everyone, but it's actually the business case for diversity, and leaders need to take that home. Okay, so yes, leading the culture change is important. Now, I couldn't list all the practical examples and policies that organisations should do, but one of the key things is training, ensuring that unconscious bias training exists within the organisation. Everyone, as I mentioned earlier, has these biases. We may not be aware of them. Even the diverse group have those biases, and we've really got to open up and actually acknowledge and be aware of those biases. And it's all about helping and mentoring, and also how we tie this into the word empathy. It's actually standing in someone else's shoes and seeing their viewpoint. And I'd recommend everyone read that fabulous book that I've forgotten the name of, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. I've heard that described as your pain in my heart. That's how empathy is. That's how empathy should be.
Yes, fantastic word, but it's about understanding a customer's viewpoint, understanding an employee's viewpoint. And it's a brilliant empathy training is another one. Okay, I'd say. There's a quick quote there from a fantastic leader in the world of bringing diversity to the workplace. And if anyone knows AJ, he is a Sikh gentleman, wears a turban, and he absolutely embeds diversity through and through the whole of the organisation. And he takes the point about innovation. Innovation is so key in the technology sector, and we don't get it unless we have better diversity in our organisation. So moving on to employees. Now, employees, we can often sit back and say, well, it's not for me, it's for them. It doesn't constitute that I need to do anything because I'm not the diverse group. And how wrong we are, okay? Because employees play a pivotal role in bringing about better inclusion, better diversity into our organisations and our companies. And it's at the level that is emotional. It's emotional intelligence. It's emotional attachment that we really need to get down to the values and see how inclusive we need to be. So the first thing I'd do is look at our teams, look around and say, are we all looking the same? Have we all got the same viewpoint? So is there a lot of groupthink going on here?
Yeah.
Because if there is a lot of groupthink, then how could our products and services be, representative of our customers?
Yeah.
It's going to be the same old things again and again, and there are many examples of how that's done. That as you mentioned about the AI algorithms, if that's not done correctly with the right representation, then it's not the way we want to source our technology and have those viewpoints. And again, training is very important. Teams, I would say we need to be a lot more collaborative. No one in today's world lives in isolation and produces a new technology or a new system. We have to have design thinking, we have to have agile ways of working, which come into behavioural changes. And diversity is about that for employees. It's about understanding, and it's about changing your behaviour, tweaking your behaviour, I'd say. Because on the whole, people are good people, I hope, and want the best. And we've all got the same goals. We work on projects, IT projects, which will have a shared goal at the end. How we get there with different viewpoints should be a celebration, should be an enrichment of the idea, not being seen as a barrier or a stopgap to the solution. And the last piece there is, we've got to keep self-developing ourselves. We live in a world where we hope we are going to be more collaborative, and we hope we're going to have an enriched experience because of the society we live in. And we are changing that society by the technology we are bringing to the table. And it cuts at the very heart of who we are in terms of being a very considerate and inclusive and tolerant and appreciative human being in terms of who we are. So the quote there is sorry,
Too quick.
The quote there is from Beth, and of course she talks about how any diversity program is about including the employees, and it's in the broadest sense the employees. It's not just for the people who are from those minority groups, as they can be called sometimes. It's about everything. Just one point, I was just going to use an example there, Brian. So I've worked in the industry for about 23 years now, and luckily I've not seen anything detrimental to myself that made me think, I want to leave this industry because, there's so much negativity around, and I don't seem to get on and progress. And it was funny, preparing for this webinar, I was on a Skype call with product managers within Vodafone. And there's about 5 guys and myself on this call. And it wasn't a televised, on camera. It was a pure Skype audio call. One of the gentlemen arrives late, Simon, as his name is, and he said, when he joins, everyone says, "Hello, Simon." Simon replies back by saying, "Hello, gents. Sorry I'm late." Just for that one brief second, I thought to myself, okay, yes. I thought, little wonder why, we have it. And he's almost accepting that it's just a male-dominated world. And my view was, now normally, only because I was too busy taking a note and thought that's good material for this webinar. I was making note of that. I would normally have made a joke, say, "Gents, hello, Simon, I'm here, it's Ruby." And it's quite interesting, that little modification of a behaviour. If it was someone new who was on that group, just thinks, oh, fair enough,
A little object lesson there.
It is.
Yes,
it is.
Absolutely.
And I am sure Simon meant no harm by this. But it comes down to the point, do we call out behaviours? And I personally think we should.
We won't publish his name and email address, but I take your point.
in a positive light, we're here to help each other.
Absolutely.
That's the key point I'm making on this. It's all about positivity.
Yeah.
So finally, we move on to what can the diverse group do. And my opening to this is the diverse group should not be a bystander to all of this and say this is all being done to me, and I will just sit back and, hey, look, that lots of things are happening and I hope I'll get promoted and it's wonderful. That is not the idea of diversity. The idea of diversity is all about inclusion. It's all about not having an insular group of people that don't feel valued or comfortable for who they are. It's all about integration. It's about collaboration. It's about bringing everyone together on this journey. So one of the very small things but very powerful things is building a support network. And I think you definitely see this in large organisations, which is brilliant to see. In fact, HMRC is a fantastic example of visibility of diverse groups, the LGBT plus groups, the women's group, the disability group, and what HMRC have done at board level have created roles as champions of each of those diverse groups to actually have someone at board level flying their flag, to say we need to do more things and we will get budget for those projects as well, which I think is absolutely brilliant because it's the public sector is a lot more in the public eye, more so. So that's great. And these diverse groups, they're a good coming together of not just diverse groups, but people. I belong to the LGBT plus and friends group, because I come together to hear their experiences. And I'm very warm to hear, we've got some real human rights people, within those groups. And it's very warming to know that people care so much about, their values and how they have suffered, in some cases, and how even at CEO level, it's a case of having zero tolerance against anything that doesn't allow inclusion.
Yeah.
And those groups are those forums for those people who don't feel as though they had a voice before, but can now really speak out and have shared experiences.
Okay.
So it's good, really good for people to actually speak out and be part, and also to spread their word. We want to know about, their experiences. We want to know if it's from a different culture or different nationality, to celebrate some of those days. And the BCS had a wonderful diversity calendar not so long ago.
Yes.
Really shines a spotlight on, people and, their fantastic contribution to society and to technology, more so. So networks are so important. And again, please, to anyone who's in a diverse group, me included, it's a case of being yourself. You have to feel comfortable and valued for who you are. No one has the right to discriminate who you are. You need to be comfortable and you need to communicate who you are. And you really need to get to know other groups, get to know the employees, the other group that we talked about, because it is a celebration, of coming together and working on solutions that better society. And on the last bullet point, it is about being resilient. And I began this presentation by saying I've always worked in IT. I'm always going to work on IT unless something drastic happens, which I hope it won't. And it's a case of being very resilient, being on the front foot, okay? And people will, it's not going to be an easy ride, and lots of people in diverse groups tell me this, but you have every right to be who you are. As a citizen of planet Earth, you have every right to work in the IT industry, and you have every right to put yourself forward for things, no matter if you don't look like those other people around you, no matter if you have a different culture and a different perspective in life, you're coming together to enrich a solution and a viewpoint which makes everything much better. So to people who are in those diverse groups, resilience is needed. And it's a perfect world, if we have that better resilience within those groups. And I use Barry as my example,
Yes.
my registered blind friend.
Yeah. So you obviously benefited hugely from that. But obviously, not everybody gets to work along with folks where they see them overcoming those kind of things. So perhaps there's a role for getting more inspirational stories out, or is that a kind of patronising view? I think it's a bit of a minefield. That. What's your view on that?
I think I'm more on the positive. I think the whole diversity picture is about raising awareness. Okay, when it comes to raising awareness, you have to go all out. Okay, because you need to get that emotional level engagement with people to say there is a problem. So using role models, using inspiring stories is a good thing. There is no harm with that. I think we need to have choice role models, though. I think people who achieve and actually do things. It is a very difficult line if you consider that. Am I just being, am I just here because of the colour of my skin?
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the way it is. It's
No.
because you've done something and you're showing yourself to be different in a way that really inspires other people, and that's my own personal viewpoint.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
people
yeah.
may disagree that, we need people of different ethnic minorities, and we need people, just to be there and be visible. And I think there's got to be a fine line between that. And you're right, it shouldn't be patronising. It should be, I'm counted because I am, a person that's different from my viewpoints, and because I'm achieving something as well.
Yeah.
From this.
Well, you've got some concluding thoughts, I know, to come on to. We've had a couple of questions in which already I've said. If anyone's got any more questions, please think about them in the next couple of minutes, and we can discuss them at the end. Although we've covered quite a lot there, I think, haven't we? But let's just move on. We've got another quote here from Sue.
Famous Sue, yes. You say Sue.
Published author Sue, yeah.
Yes, and people who don't know who Sue is, okay, Sue Black, amazing lady. A little bit of background. She did start off the BCS Women. I should mention that, of which I'm a committee member. So big plug to people, men, women, school children. Please join BCS Women. Because we think diversity, gender diversity, starts at school children age and works its way right the way through. And we need men to be on our side as well for this. But Sue's done some amazing things as well as start off the BCS Women's Group. She also led the charge to keep Bletchley Park alive and kicking, which was so important, not just because of the war effort, because of Alan Turing and the work he did there. And, the fantastic Alan Turing, as we know, castrated because of his gay beliefs, okay, which is not the world we live in today, but we just see what the IT world missed because he later committed suicide, I should say. And, it's a travesty, absolutely, that, lives in that light, are shortened because of who and what they are. But, the fantastic work of Sue Black shines a light on all of that. And Sue is a great pioneer with her pink hair of diversity. And she has a wonderful quote there, it's all about diverse teams, diverse workforces and experiences. That is so an empowered word, experiences contributing to make diverse products and services. And that's what we sell, and that's what makes revenue, and that's what makes the world go round.
I thought we had a review. Sorry, guys. We missed one out there, didn't we? We were going to have a review section. So, give us a little bit of a summing up, Ruben. I know you did have a slide on this. I'm not too sure what happened to that, but that's not a problem. I know you can improvise.
I can improvise, yeah. So the concluding thoughts are that diversity is for everyone. Diversity is a collaborative initiative which involves the three stakeholder groups, which are the leaders, and there are actions and initiatives that the leaders absolutely need to pioneer and lead. There are key things that us as employees, citizens of the planet Earth, need to think about, whether it's behaviour change, whether it's about, training ourselves in unconscious bias and being aware and working with people. And the IT industry is multicultural, it's multinational, it knows no boundaries, even though Brexit might try to put those boundaries in place, but we're still going to be an international, multicultural industry that needs to embrace different thoughts and different ideas. And the diverse group, the final stakeholder group, is so important because it's about celebrating the differences, feeling valued, feeling comfortable, and feeling as though your viewpoints count to allow the IT industry to allow for innovation and better things. So in summary, it's all about having a coherent, a cohesive, and a collaborative and concise, if I can use all the C's there, okay?
we like some alliteration, thank you.
Approach to a diversity and inclusion program.
Yes. So we haven't had any further questions in here, but perhaps I could just sort of draw one or 2 points out that struck me as we've been talking. You said to me when we were preparing for this that you hadn't had that many, you didn't feel like you'd had that many obstacles put in your way,
Yeah.
which I find quite a heartening story in and of itself, especially when we perhaps think back to the situation you've already mentioned with Alan Turing. Do you think that generally things are actually improving, or have you had a little bit of a charmed life? I don't know. And what's your perception on that?
Oh dear, have I had a charmed, privileged life? No, it's definitely not. What's my perception? A very good question. Okay, let me just go to the end point. If you look at the statistics for women in IT, okay, it's a very dismal picture.
Yes, it's
Okay,
dreadful.
so are things improving from a figures point of view? No. Okay, and I often question, what are we doing so wrong? Okay, that nothing is happening. I think, from my point of view, okay, why I stayed, and there have been one or two instances, people will look at me, and I know if you're using a kind of like subliminal way of communicating with people, what's going through their head, oh, female, what would she know working in IT, okay, and I know that barrier is there,
Yeah.
okay, and my resilience says I will talk to them about technology, I will talk to them about IT, I will talk to them about solution design, and then they will accept me.
Yeah.
So I'm on the front foot all the time.
Yeah.
It's the point I made right at the end. It is about resilience, trying to be resilient. I think with this program, I think what we need to do, and we're doing it, we're raising awareness. We are really raising awareness. To any change program, the first cycle is the awareness. The awareness has to happen. Then we can start to do some activities that lead to this. If the awareness is not there and the questions are not asked, and we cannot have any action plan.
Yeah.
If we just go straight in with actions, people will question, why are we doing this? And then you're not hitting them at the very, the hearts and minds level, the emotional level.
Yeah.
I wish more was done. I really do. I think the women that I know that are technical architects, they're very resilient ladies. Okay, they've come from an engineering, IT background, STEM background, pretty much like myself, and they integrate themselves in a lot of the time. And I think what we're starting to see is hopefully the pipeline of young children. We may have a lost generation, the generation after me, but I think the pipeline will start to come in. BCS myself, BCS women, we're doing so much, and I'm just using women here as an example, to go into schools to convince them that don't use it. I sit here, not as I hate to say it, but pale, male, stale. Don't know what the expression is.
That's what I'm here for.
No, Brian, you mustn't. And it's a case of everyone is different, and that stereotype that school children may have, we've got to eliminate that. And so me being here and other people being here of different types
one more little question then. I wonder if you think we might have made some putting the numbers to one side. Okay, we can look at numbers regularly, and we know they haven't changed much in the last 10 years, but I wonder if it might have changed a little bit if you didn't have to feel you had to work twice as hard, which just like you said earlier, that you felt you had to make twice the effort to show people you had that technical background. That shouldn't be needed, should it? So I wonder if you didn't have to do that, if that might be an indicator of progress.
So that's putting the onus on the other side then, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the onus. That's where the behavioural change will come in, where we're saying to the majority group that have acceptance. There are going to be different people in your biases.
And they will know stuff.
And they will know stuff, and they'll be very credible, and match peer to peer on their capability and ability. And if the unconscious bias training is there, and I am starting to see this in small pockets where people are really to the point of almost like promoting me and say, let Ruby speak, blah, 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 she's got a point to make. Not that I needed people to give me the platform to speak, but I noticed that not everyone is like me though.
No.
That's my empathy to say there are quiet, shy people within our work environment, and they would need that kind of let those people speak, let them have a point of view,
a bit of validation to have a platform. So I think if I'm hearing you correctly then, because we hear lots of debates or behind the scenes, people don't perhaps come out and say these things out loud anymore, do they? But having percentages is kind of a form of tokenism, and how do we know that a case study is not patronising, the sorts of thing. The message I'm getting from you is actually don't worry too much about the opinions you might get back, but just have a little bit more confidence in yourself that you've got something to offer. It's like a personal empowerment kind of thing.
Yes, on a personal level, most definitely. It is on the individual level, because one of the key things that keeps me still within the industry, as well as being on the front foot, as well as, proving myself all the time, is that I have a passion for the industry. The fact that I'm working on an accessibility project at the moment for unified communications, the fact that technology is impacting people like Barry, my friend who's registered blind, it's a case of that is so empowering to me. And in 23 years, all the different products I've worked on and designed, I've absolutely enjoyed it. So whoever deters me from, in the workplace, etc., my passion for the technology and the IT far outweighs, the views of some people.
Yeah.
But I think that's what people at the very core should remember. You came into that IT industry because you wanted to make a change. You wanted to earn some money, some good money, but you also wanted to feel comfortable and accepted for who you are as well. And that passion within you shouldn't die. And that's why resilience is so important. It's so important, resilience is.
I think your passion has come across very clearly for us today, and we appreciate the effort you put into our presentation there, the information you've given us, the different perspectives you've given us as well. So Ruby, thank you so much for doing your presentation for us. We appreciate your time, and look out for the next BCS webinar, please. And thank you, everybody, for your questions, and we'll hopefully speak to you again. Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you.